Hello and welcome to episode 250 of the Own the Build podcast with me, Paul Hemming. I am delighted to be at this milestone, 250 episodes. When we started 5 years ago, I was unsure a QS podcast would land, but here we are. Thanks to all the listeners for your constant feedback and just generally being involved in the show. As teased before, in the run-up to this episode, to celebrate this milestone, we're doing a collaboration episode with the RICS and Project Flux podcast. My good friend James Garner, who is celebrating his hat trick of Own the Build appearances, and we will come to that.
So honoured.
So, as many of you know, the RICS has published the first ever global professional standard for the responsible use of AI in surveying. It comes into effect in March 2026. This show is going out in January 2026. So apt timing. And this is the first ever RICS professional standard for AI. Its scope is wide-reaching: valuation, cost management, construction, land, and infrastructure. I almost butchered how I pronounced that, didn't I? I'm nervous on episode 250. Who would have thought it?
You're doing really well, don't worry.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. So on to today's guest. I'm joined by three key people involved in the drafting. James Garner, head of AI and data at Gleeds and host of Project Flux, has been on the show before. Chris de Gruben, Senior Director and Head of AI and Property at Artefact, and also co-chair of the RICS AI paper, and is looking at me quite content, I think, with how I just pronounced his surname. But yeah, there we go.
Done well.
And Matthew Lavy, KC, who is a barrister at 4 Pump Court. So thank you guys for all being here. I've just given you a brief intro. I'm just going to go around the room as you sit to me and just ask you, I guess, for a 60-second intro to yourselves. I'll go with you first, Chris.
Thanks. So my job is primarily about deploying AI in property companies. So Artefact is a big global beast, 2,000 people across the world. AI is booming, it's changing every single day. My job is really understanding the needs of property companies and deploying AI within it where it makes sense and where it works.
Excellent. Awesome. Matthew?
Yeah, so I'm a barrister. I specialise in technology disputes in all their flavours. I mean, the way I like to put it is if it's got flashing blue or green lights, I do it. And if it's something that runs on something with flashing blue and green lights, I do it. But I mean, my particular interest in AI is I'm co-editor and one of the authors of The Law of Artificial Intelligence, which is a big, hefty doorstop, and it's also a legal practitioner text in AI. It's a super interesting area, both because of what AI will do to the business of law, but also what AI does to challenge the law, the way it works, the way it interacts with us as professionals.
Awesome. And James, as I said, I should have come prepared for this, and I should be able to reference the two other episodes that you did and the numbers.
I was hoping you would, yeah.
But as such an esteemed guest, you would remember, surely.
Absolutely. I'm just testing you. I'm waiting for you to catch
So
up.
James came on the show twice before. You're here for your hat trick. Over to you, James.
Yeah, I'm James Garner. I'm head of AI and data at Gleeds. My background is as a QS. Spent 20 years in practice before I moved into the digital team, looking at the overall digital transformation. And obviously AI is a huge part of that. And I think one of the big focuses for me this year and going through to next year is actually around culture change, because I feel this is more than a technology rollout. This is real cultural change. We're asking people to do things in a very, very different way. I also have another hat on, which is as chair of the Project Data Analytics Task Force, which is a collaboration between academics, other consultants, and various other people in the industry, all around outreach about how we can demystify some of the blockers, I think, about adopting AI.
And you talk there about culture. What do you think is the current culture in construction? This is RICS wide, but I'm going to be construction biased just because that's my background. You talk about changing the culture and demystifying there. Where do you think we're at right now with the culture and surveying, let's call it, with AI?
I don't think it's that different from many other industries, actually. I think people are still seeing AI as a technological rollout, much like you get your Windows updates or you get your Outlook update, and people think it's a passive thing that's going to be done to them. You know, they're going to do AI, tick in a box. And the cultural change part of it is this is a foundational technology, and it means that we're going to have to learn to work with it in a different way. It's a very active technology. And I think that's the bit that a lot of people are missing, but I'm starting to see good signs now. People starting to realize that this needs upskilling. People have got to take their own responsibility to upskill themselves. Obviously, there's lots of good stuff going on in various companies and stuff that the institutions are doing, but you shouldn't wait for it to be done to you. So what I'm trying to say, not with my Gleeds hat on and with my Project Data Analytics Task Force hat on, is that you take responsibility for your own AI literacy. So I'm starting to see that changing now.
Yeah.
And that's coming through from, actually from the university. I was with the university yesterday, who are making this a core part of the curriculum, actually.
And that's something which you personally have done as well, right? You're doing a master's in...
Yeah. I did a level 4 back when it was COVID and we all had a bit of time. And then I got persuaded. The government are taking away the level 7 funding, as I think any
So
time
you
now.
snapped at it.
Well, I was kind of, you've got to do it. This is your last chance. This is your last chance. So I did it. And yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. It's tough, but I'm enjoying it. It's good to find out what's happening sort of under the hood with a lot of this technology.
I think it's an interesting point. So as part of my work with the RICS, I'm also the trainer for the AI in surveying course that the RICS does, which is a 5-part course. The cohort is limited at 80 people. Typically, the RICS runs these courses twice a year. We have seen such a massive uptake that we're now running a 4th iteration in 4 months, or in 3 months since the release of the document. There's massive appetite to come through it, and we have a chat function, like we get lots of questions from the 80 people who attend. And it's fascinating because for a lot of people it's an existential threat. It's, my job is going to go away, a AI bot will do my job better than I can, I'm scared of this. There's also a whole cohort who said, this is now massive, I need to get on board with it, I need to understand
Leaning into it almost.
I don't know where to start. And so they use these courses to start getting into it. But what I find interesting is within my role at Artefact, we have 12 different industries. And every year we do a big survey of all our clients and prospective clients as to how much they use AI, how much they plan to use AI next year and so on. Property is always the bottom of all of our industries. We are laggards by a significant margin. And there's a number of reasons for that. One is the industry itself and the sector, because we're not commodities, all of those sorts of things. And because we're so heavily regulated, similar to the financial industries and so on, there's a lot of risk aversion. But now, particularly in the last 2 or 3 months, I find the demand of surveyors to learn about AI and to actually get on board with it has skyrocketed. I get every day LinkedIn messages from people saying, I see you work in it, because I'm a chartered surveyor as a background. Yeah. I'm one of the few sort of chartered surveyors that also does a lot of AI work. I get LinkedIn messages every day. I see you doing this. Can you come and talk to us about it? And talk to us about what are the use cases? What can change? How can we do things?
Institutional kind of interest. Yeah.
Big
companies and organizations.
Yeah, big companies and so on.
To you.
But also, what we get often is, we've switched on Copilot. Now what?
Job done.
Solved it. And I don't really understand. No one's using it. What does that mean?
Yeah.
But it's exactly the same in all professions, I think. And we are getting to exactly the same inflection point, for example, in law, as you've just described, because we've gone from, this is all a bit scary, to, I really need to find out about this. Yeah. And I think, again, the last 2 or 3 months is about the right time frame. Yeah. I'm starting to see people move from the conceptual, I must get to understand this, to a much more practical, right, how am I going to use this? How am I going to use it properly?
Yeah.
How am I not going to be one of those idiots who ends up in huge trouble because they haven't spotted a hallucination?
And so you guys feel like we're at an inflection point in kind of the culture around it, let's to simplify it. But what was the driver for the RICS to put pen to paper on these guidelines? I don't know who is best to answer that first.
I can give it a start.
Co-chair, you should probably go for it.
It came from a variety of different sources. One, probably most important, is demand from members. Because particularly if you're a valuer, we are regulated, and valuers feel lots of pressure on their fees. Fees are going down. Client expectations are going up. The number of surveys they have to do is going up as well. And just to keep their head above water, they want to start using AI, they want to get to it. But naturally, they're a bit lost. And they say, if I use AI, will I lose my license? Will my PI cover for this? How do I do AI responsibly and service my clients without any guidance from the RICS. So there was a lot of pushback,
Okay.
a push to the RICS of saying, we actually want some guidance from the RICS as to how we do this. Then, of course, there's market pressures, there's regulatory pressures, there's all sorts of other things. But over the last year, we've been speaking with the RICS. There is a lot of need of embedding AI in everything the RICS does. At the same time, as I'm sure hasn't escaped your attention, the RICS is doing a bit of soul searching and identity searching as to who we are, what do we do, how do we better serve our members, how do we become relevant or remain relevant. Remain relevant, I should say, in the modern world. And we've always struggled to attract younger surveyors to the profession and so on. And I think as a trade body, they've realized that unless they really start embracing it, they're not going to move ahead of the times. AI specifically. And that is now a fact of life, just like the internet, just like PowerPoints and Excel were at a certain point of our lives. So they need to move forward. They need to do it. The guidance was brought along as a first stage to really start supporting and guiding valuers on how to use it responsibly.
QSs.
Surveyors, generally speaking. I say valuers because I'm a valuer.
I say QSs because I'm a QS, so we can be friends. And so, is there any further reflections that you guys would have on that as to?
I would just say it's a really positive step. You know, the RICS is trying to lead the conversation rather than be, and with regulation, it's always catching up with the technology. So, to my mind, it was a really positive step because you've got to be there because undoubtedly you need a base to then start iterating from, and this will be the first of many iterations of it. So, I think it was just like you say, we had that inflection point. Members were asking for it. The RICS felt that they had to give guidance to put everyone on the same level playing field, whether you're a big member or a new, one-man band. And like I say, I think it's trying to lead the conversation rather than chase it.
And with valuers being your background, your experience, and valuers, you kind of contextualize it there as to kind of why there was a drive to specific to that niche. Was it the same with QSs? Is that something that we were seeing?
Yeah, people were asking for this. I think this was people. There's lots of tools out there, and there was a nervousness around what does this mean, particularly for my PI. How does this relate? And what does this mean to me as a member, and what does it mean to me as a firm? And in a way, it's good because we've had a lot of cases now. The recent Deloitte case, for instance, is one that I use to illustrate what can go wrong when you don't follow these guidelines.
£400,000 fine.
Yeah, exactly. So. That was sure to happen, these kind of case studies, and I'm sure there'll be case law around it in due course. You want to be ahead of that, and I think that's the key thing.
And so what was the objective of drafting this guidance?
I can start us off. I think to a degree is to inform and protect our members. Mm-hmm. One is to inform them as to what is responsible use of AIs and how do you start using it? What mechanisms should you have in place? What processes? What governance do you need to have in place in order to use it responsibly for your clients? Mm-hmm. And two is to actually protect our members so that when lawsuits inevitably happen, when there's disputes on the opinions of value, on all those sorts of things, they actually have an audit trail. They have a body of work to say, we've taken the right steps to protect
as per this guideline.
As per the guidelines, etc., etc. So it's both to clarify, to govern, to protect,
and support
members and support.
Although I can't speak for RICS. I mean, my role is I was asked if I would join the working group, and I did. So what their motivation is, you're better off than me. But I have to say, I have another take on it. I agree with everything you've said, but for me, standards like yours are a great enabler, actually. They give you confidence to use. And so it's also, we may touch on this again later, but I don't really see a standard like the RICS standard as sort of hoops you have to jump through before you can use AI. I see it as a way that with confidence, you can go ahead, you can actually try stuff out, you can use AI because you've got a framework to help you navigate your way through.
And you say that in the context of you've seen lots of other standards in adjacent kind of sectors, and it's a softer standard. That might not be the right language, but it's an enabling standard rather than a restricting standard is how you view it.
I think that's right. And if you, let's take some extreme sort of counterexample. Look at the EU AI Act, because that's been in the press today, as we were discussing earlier, actually. Sorry, I'm not allowed to say discussing earlier, am I?
No, you can. Yeah, keep that in the edit.
So you've got the EU AI Act. It's a big heavyweight standard in a way. It's obviously regulation. And it's focused on all the things you have to do in order to be allowed to use, only high-risk AI, but high-risk AI in all sorts of contexts.
Yeah.
And standards like that can be really problematic, and they can, certainly for SME-type organizations, they can really prevent you going ahead, experimenting, putting out new products.
Yeah.
I think by contrast, the RICS standard is super light touch. I mean, at the end of the day, it's sort of doing the same thing. It's trying to put a governance layer on the use of AI. But it really is, it's a flexible standard because it uses language like appropriate. It uses language like reasonable. What's appropriate and what's reasonable is going to depend on who you are, what you're using AI for. So I think, soft is sounds a bit pejorative, but I know what you mean, and I think that's right.
I think it's interesting that certainly your kind of mindset, and we've heard about the doomers, gloomers, bloomers, and zoomers. Your mindset. Well, I'm happy to talk about that. It's this that Reid Hoffman, who was the founder of LinkedIn, came up with these 4 kind of personas, if you like. And I think where you are, if you're like a doomer, you think it's an existential threat. The way your mindset is will dictate how you read. And I know some people have said, it's quite heavy-handed, this standards, but that I think is dictated by that kind of
the
persona and the way you come to it. And I agree. I think actually what this is not meant to be a stick to beat people with. This is meant to be an enabler to help people. And if you look at it in that kind of mindset, then that's what you'll get out of it. Of course, if you look at it with the other mindset that this is over-regulation and it's going to, I'm sure you'll find reasons to think it's that.
But I guess that's my question. And with you drafting it, for want of a better phrase, or for finalising how it would land, was the perception or was the objective at the outset to be an enabler rather than a restrictor in how it landed? Was that kind of discussed as part of the working group where we thought we don't want to limit, we want to enable?
I think the clue's in the name, it's guidance, right? We want to guide, we want to support. And we had many hours of discussion around how do we not make it restrictive, how do we not make it a heavy burden, particularly for sole surveyors, sole practices and so on. But how do we just guide and provide them with the tools necessary to be able.
And so if you think about the clauses which are mandatory, the musts and the shalls, there are very few, and they are frankly all things that you need to be doing anyway, just to be vaguely competent and protect yourself.
It's common sense a lot.
A lot of it really is common sense.
And so can we talk then about not in absolute depth and detail, but like what are the things that a surveyor should be doing when it comes to AI? What are the pillars of this guidance?
I can start with one, for instance, maintaining a risk register.
Okay.
A risk register is simply a spreadsheet or document where you highlight the risks that you see in using AI. You know, for instance, it's a black box exercise. We don't really understand the calculations, what goes on into it, how it comes out to certain outputs. We don't understand how customers might use it. There's many things about AI that are inherently risky in using it.
Yeah.
And we think it's a good process, even if you are a sole surveyor or a small firm or even a mid-sized firm, to have a thought exercise where you go, what are the risks of using this? How do we mitigate these risks? Are there disclosures in our reports? Are there certain things we have to do in order to mitigate these risks from a data security perspective, from a privacy perspective, from all of those sorts of things? And then how do we communicate these to our clients? And how do we accept the risks ourselves? And how do we make sure our teams are trained with these risks and so on? So when you read the guidance, you might say, I now need to do a risk register. This is an additional burden of paperwork I have to do.
To unlock AI.
But actually, it's, as Matthew says, it's a very basic thing. If you're going to use it in the professional context, to understand how can you use it, where can you use it, where do you put yourself at risk as a firm, and how do you mitigate these risks? It's a very simple thing to do. And for most firms, it will take a couple of hours to do, and it's a very useful process. It's
effectively the calculation that you go through in your boardroom or in your mind, right, as to what are the rights and wrongs of doing it, why should we, why shouldn't we, but you're actually documenting it and then using that document as a lever to communicate with your clients, whether in your reports, your value, whatever. Okay, that all makes sense.
And it should guide your future actions and where do you find the level of risk acceptable and where do you not find it acceptable? Where can it impair your professional judgment? I mean, I'll talk again as a valuer, but we do not recommend in any way that an AI gives an opinion of value. It can do many things. It can generate reports. It can support with email writing. It can make finding data easier. It can do, there's hundreds of use cases within valuation alone of using AI. The one where I will advise valuers not to do is the actual opinion of value.
Yeah.
That relies on your professional judgment. And at the end of the day, your professional indemnity will rely on your judgment and you being able to defend and explain how you came to that opinion.
As opposed to saying AI valued it at
Exactly.
X.
And that would be an acceptable risk, and your professional indemnity will not cover that. Right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
these are the sort of things you need to bear in mind. But these, generally speaking, should be a discussion within your firm as to, we want to start using it, using AI to help us write reports.
Yeah.
Very low risk. We can read the report, we can amend it, we can change it, we can understand it. We have a basis of thousands of reports we can work on, all those sorts of things. We have enough experience to validate what the AI has done. Having an AI asking me what is the value of this property, and it spits out a number and you put this number in your report, is too high a risk.
And so that risk register effectively says, in those two examples, write in the reports low risk, and then you can kind of mandate and structure that within your company.
And you say mitigation of that is I have a surveyor read it and make sure, double check everything to make sure it's there, etc. And then maybe in your disclosures you put in place something that says part of this report was generated through AI, but has been validated by a human surveyor. Right.
And a lot of this is common sense, right?
It's
it's no different in a way from using a graduate or an intern.
You wouldn't say that though, would you? This report was drafted by a graduate, but a senior did spend 10 minutes looking at it.
But that's the reality, with the way we're trying to use this is that we still got to have that human in the loop on both ends.
Yeah.
And I try and use the analogy of the bookending approach, which is, we're still responsible as chartered surveyors for what the brief is. So the first bookend, we letting the AI do a lot of the grunt work.
Yeah.
And then crucially, we're taking responsibility for that output. And AI is not a replacement for your professional responsibility.
Yeah.
And that's basically what the standards try.
That makes sense. And the comparable for a QS in Chris's example there of valuation being a cost plan, right? It's that you can use it to help you get to a certain point, but you're the one who says it's 7.5 million, and you can't then say
you take responsibility for it.
And it's your name on the report.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the graduate QS.
Just to contrarian, I don't disagree with anything there, but context, for me, context is everything, right? Because, take the example of, obviously, if you're being paid to exercise professional judgment, whether it's as a QS or whether it's a valuer, you need to exercise professional judgment. But let's say you have a client, a portfolio client, and you're doing massive evaluations for them all the time. You can well see that there may be circumstances in which you might say anything below a certain value threshold, the AI will do it. And you agree that with the client, it's in the contract. And then what they know they're getting for everything below a value threshold is the AI's output. And sometimes that'll be wrong, sometimes it'll be right. But when it's wrong, it probably doesn't matter on a sort of portfolio basis. And that's fine, but that's completely transparent. You've thought about it. You've discussed it with your client, and that's again, it's sort of common sense. Actually, sometimes it's perfectly acceptable to use AI in higher risk situations for collateral reasons, cost reasons, for example. But provided everyone knows what is the service that's being provided, we're good. It's where you don't do that it starts to go horrendously wrong.
And that, I guess, takes us back to the point of the reason and purpose for the guidelines, because that would have probably been happening previously. People would have been using AI without any structure or without any thought and exposing themselves and or the RICS, right? Because there wasn't any guidelines saying this is how it should be done.
And also we have parts of the guidance which talk about what forms of AI can you use in order to maintain GDPR and confidentiality and so on. So you can't use an open public ChatGPT to put in client reports into that, for instance. And this is guidance. We explain it as a must, but if you're going to use AI to use proprietary information or client information, it has to be tenanted on your servers. It has to be a bespoke AI that you have that's tuned and trained on your documents that you have full control of, which is an enterprise grade version, etc. You cannot use this. This is also, again, to protect valuers so they understand where the limits are and where the use cases are.
It has to be on your server
It has to be an enterprise version of
Okay,
a
fine.
GPT.
Is to stop people using the free, because nothing's for free in this world. It's a bit like
Yeah.
Facebook. The free versions, the trade-off is the information is training the model.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure our members are using, you pay
Paid,
for the
yeah.
enterprise grade where it doesn't happen and there's some protection around it.
Yeah.
And that really stops this concept of shadow AI. You've got to make sure people know what the right tool to use is within your organization, because if you don't, people will just use the free versions and then you've got no control, you've lost the control. So that's a really important part of it.
And so we've talked about going back to the kind of like the pillars of what's in this risk register, kind of like your starting point. Kind of take me through the journey of the rest of the document if you could.
The bit I really like is the explainability clause. So I think that really sums up a lot of what this is about. You, as a chartered surveyor, still needs to be able to explain the output. Now, you're right. The actual algorithm, the way these algorithms work, is a black box. So it's very sometimes difficult to decipher what's happened. But so that's why you wouldn't just have a junior or an intern sending this report out, because they wouldn't. If a client asked them a question about it, they wouldn't be able to answer it. But as a professional person, you understand what that output is, and that explainability clause I think is so important.
And so if we were to contextualize that with your example of getting to evaluation, just the explainability, just further develop.
So you could say I have used an AI to crunch through large spreadsheets. You wouldn't use the word crunch, but to analyze in depth large spreadsheets of comparable data sets within your area to extract the ones which are most comparable to the target property. And this gives us a number of target properties of 10, let's say, of comparable properties. I have then myself selected these 3 as the most logical ones to use, for instance. Right, which is something a value today will do on Rightmove or will do on other tools. But you can today, if you have access to a spreadsheet or to sort of databases, to massively speed up understanding which ones are the most comparable.
Okay.
But one of the things I'd say, so this, you talk about the various tenets of the document. So yes, there's the operational procedural things you have to do internally to be ready to use AI. Then absolutely, there's the explainability aspects. But then also, for me, the third most important is the transparency and the communication back to your clients. Yeah. Your clients have to know where they are using AI. And like Matthew says, if you have an agreement with your client saying, for your portfolio of companies, because they're all sub 50,000 garage units, etc., I'd like to use an AI to do the valuations of these as an AVM.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. As long as the client is aware, as long as it's in your disclosures, as long as you've done your conflict of interest and everything else, absolutely go to town and use it. But the transparency element to your clients is pivotal.
Yeah.
What we've seen very often is that surveyors across all pathways will use AI and not disclose it to their clients, thinking, oh, well, it's just helped me to write my report. It's just did this. There's nothing important.
Yeah.
And actually, if you haven't read through it properly, there might be things in there that you don't agree with, that don't represent you, don't represent your opinion, and you might fall foul of that, and it might impact your professional ability.
Yeah, and so we were coming from a world, and I know that this goes out in March or is enforceable from March, but we're coming from a world where previously it was kind of anything goes, and people weren't doing risk registers. Maybe some were. We're kind of thinking about it in their head, should I do this, should I not do this? Explainability around valuation or cost plans or whatever maybe wasn't always there. And then clients weren't necessarily being communicated that this is AI. It was kind of just being used. So we're in the Wild West and we're moving towards a place where, because talking to the point about whether it's an enabler versus a restrictor, those 3 pillars don't feel particularly restrictive to me. They feel like if you're paying a chartered surveyor to do something, you want them to have gone through the risks. You want them to be able to explain what they're valuing and be transparent about how they got there, so it doesn't sound insane to me. And
to borrow a quote, AI is extraordinarily powerful and can do incredible things. It's the biggest technological revolution we've seen probably in the last 100 years. Far more so than internet, far more so than personal computers or even mobile phones. I think it will completely revolutionize the world. But with that great power comes some responsibility, particularly if you come from a regulated profession where you have a duty of care to your clients. And so the guidance is the first step in better supporting our valuers, our surveyors, in that duty of care.
Stop saying valuers.
Values.
Values and others.
Values, rule of profession.
I knew this would be a problem.
We're both picking up on this, aren't we, as QSs?
Marks against you there, Chris.
But the RICS Red Book is being updated. The APC processes are being updated. Everything is being updated with AI front of mind. We know it's a fact of life. We know people are going to use it. We want to better support and bring the profession into the 21st century.
And the key point there is you said that first step. I think this is the important thing. This is not the end of the journey.
This is phase one.
Yeah, there's going to be so, and the technology is moving so fast. Who knows what's going to come out in the next few years? And I think this gives us a good foundation to build off as those technologies inevitably come. We have to be agile with this.
I have to say, I'll be pretty upset if we're not sitting here next year and we're talking about RICS registers where you have to explain why you're not using AI for a second.
Point number one. And so if we shift the conversation away from surveyors for a moment, I'm a QS, but I'm also a software founder, and we sell QS software, for want of a better phrase, to simplify it, which has AI embedded within it. What should we be doing differently? Because we're looked at it through the lens of, let's say, I don't know, the user of AI, as opposed to the vendor of AI, and I can kind of picture both. What's different for me?
I think you've got to be it's the explainability. Gone are the days where you can just sell a black box to clients. They need to know exactly the same thing as the standard's saying is what's happening there and how do I explain it? So I think being able to answer those questions is going to be really crucial for software vendors into any industry, really, but definitely into
I'd actually put together a fact sheet in your shoes of these are the risks, this is how we use it, this is where we use it, this is what purpose we intend for it, this is how you as a user of my software should take it and use it, this is how you apply professional judgment on these outputs, and so on.
And roadmaps as well, where you're going.
And even things like data sources, how do you use data, but also for yourself, how do you use your users'
data?
How do you use their use of the software and so on to train your own AIs and those sorts of things?
Yeah, because so we sell enterprise software, and so it's difficult selling enterprise software into construction companies at the best of times. So in terms of like technical notes and all those bits and pieces, the guidance talks a lot to procurement, right? And I think we would already do a lot of the things that we have to do anyway to kind of get through selling enterprise software. I guess construction is a laggard, right? I am going to talk about construction here, sorry mate. But like you said property is a laggard. I don't know where the line delineates between the two of us, but construction is absolutely a laggard as well. So
are we going to have a fight? Who's worse?
This is a QS podcast. Valuers are worse. But if I guess just do you think in any way, shape or form this kind of guidance makes companies who are already slow to flex their muscles and change think, oh, now there's this guidance, and then they read the guidance and they think, ugh.
No, I think it will lead to more intelligent conversations from your buyers, from your users, who will come to you and says, we'd love to use your software, but first we must understand these things because we have to report them back to our and clients. And so I think if anything, what this will do is will allow the surveyors to have more intelligent conversations with the software vendors as to what are the risks, how do you use data, how do you protect information, and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, because that's one of the key points as well that we haven't talked about is the fact that one of the things that it recommends is getting everyone up to a certain standard so you can have those conversations. So you're right, more intelligent conversations.
Which is a good thing, because we want to be operating and selling software in a market where you have a knowledgeable client base, as opposed to what's AI, I'm terrified of it, so on and so forth, right?
That's true, but I mean, there's a kind of tightrope, isn't it? Because on the one hand, I mean, you definitely want to help your clients buy your software, and you can quite see the way to do that is to, I mean, for example, fact sheets which actually say precisely how you can meet the requirements of the standard would be phenomenal. Yeah. On the other hand, you're a software vendor, and what do software vendors need to do above all else is they have to disclaim and limit their liability, because at the end of the day, you sell a powerful tool into a whole load of surveying firms. You have no idea what they're actually using them for, and so there is that tension. And this isn't a conversation about software vendor terms, but
we can get into it. It'd be quite helpful.
But the reality is, it is very standard for software vendors to completely wash their hands of any responsibility for how their software is used. And the question, and we're not there yet, we don't really know, how do you reconcile that with being as helpful as you possibly can to try and help people get through their regulatory hoops?
Do you think there is a world where we end up with, software vendors who are compliant, trusted vendors, and then we end up with, let's just say, those who are not? And
actually, I don't think it will take much from you or from good, reputable software to put together these fact sheets to make sure they have transparency and so on. One thing I was going to say, it's interesting. So we as Artefact work cross-industry, but within the regulated industries, we see increasingly our clients, as soon as the software says, oh, we are AI enabled, they go, yeah, no thanks. Because there is a fear of, people are going to use it wrong. Yeah. We don't understand what it will do. It's a black box thing. We don't have to report this back to our clients, to our risk board, to all those sorts of things. I'd much rather your software wasn't AI enabled and just had explainability.
But we have had those conversations, but actually I guess where the power lies within this is that, it is AI enabled, but it's also completely AI enabled within the guidelines that are set out by the RICS, so accountability, explainability, transparency, X, Y, and Z.
And being very clear as to this is where we use AI.
Exactly.
And this is where we do not.
Yeah.
The interesting thing there is everyone says their stuff's AI powered, and some of it actually isn't. Like
everyone
of AI.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that's having sometimes a
now I see a backlash against it, particularly in the last few months.
Yeah, I now it was kind of predictable, and then we'll reach some equilibrium, no doubt, at some point in the future. I mean, the big point about this is that we haven't talked about is bias, because a lot of these AI tools are trained on data, and inherently you can never get rid of bias altogether, and that's the main thing I think people are worried about. So it's particularly your question about software vendors, it's giving people some kind of understanding of how the data's been trained, so you've limited the bias in there.
And I think because value is inherently superior, when you give an opinion of value, so much of it is context and experience of things that cannot be measured. If it cannot be measured, then AI won't understand it, right? So yes, you have comparable properties and you have some data on comparable properties, but an AI can't know if it has a really nice sea view of what the neighborhood looks like, all those sorts of things, which are context heavy, which are human, which are intrinsic. And property is irrational at the best of time. It's emotional. It makes no sense. Where do I want to live? Right? Yeah. And an AI does really well in retail, where you're selling cans of Coke. It does really well when you have massive amounts of data to power through. In actually surveying, where so much is driven by human relationships and context and irrational human behavior, AI will only take you so far. And you have to be very, very cognizant of that. And this is why I don't think most of our jobs will go away in the next 20 years.
That's a positive
because you
thing.
still need your professional judgment, you still need all of this. The AI is an enabler, it's a tool, just like Excel is a tool or the internet is a tool.
Just a very powerful one.
It's a very, very powerful tool, but it has to be used as a tool. It's not a replacement for what we do, even for QSs.
What I heard recently was what AI is good for is any task that's verifiable. So, cost plans but the bits of our job, whether it's construction, whether it's property, there's so much of it that's non-verifiable. The negotiations, the stuff where you've got to have difficult conversations. And that's the bit where I reckon the great promise with AI is actually it's going to free us up to do more of that, which is actually where the real benefit happens.
It's the human connection element.
It absolutely
it's
is.
The relationship.
That's how we talk to it as well. It's actually unlocking you away from the nonsense and freeing you up for good human interaction.
I'm an expert witness, which means occasionally I have to go to arbitration court, and someone like Matthew grills me, and the opening line is always the same. We've read through your report and we've noticed that you haven't declared this, or you haven't done this.
I never start that.
We've noticed that the graduate has written this report.
And therefore, how can we trust the rest of your report if you can't trust you to follow the standard on this simple thing?
Is that true, Matthew?
I've seen it done. It's not how I cross-examine experts.
And so because I got frustrated with barristers doing this to me, I built a little agent that took in place the RICS Red Book, the IPMS, the IVSC, so the main books, body of text. And whenever I publish a report, I feed it into it and I say, check my report against these books to find...
Give me a good answer for the barrister.
But it's about find me areas where I haven't fulfilled the requirements.
It's critiquing you.
Critiquing,
That's
yeah.
That's a very good use case.
Yeah, and so that's something I do automatically. Whenever I publish a report, I give it to my agent and I say, find me the areas where you think I'm not meeting the requirements of these 3 books.
And it comes back and says, you've disappointed me.
Excellent. Okay, so just kind of, we have in some ways covered this, but I thought it would be interesting just to go back to it. We talked about the EU AI Act earlier, and that act has come under some critique for kind of being a restrictor rather than an enabler, right? And that is a sweeping generalization of the narrative, but let's just go with that. Was, first and foremost, what would your views be on that? And was that front and center as you guys set out to draft what you've drafted?
I think it is a fair critique. I mean, the answer is time will tell, but the market seems to be speaking, and the market is saying, actually, big players are sulking about having to deliver in the EU because of the Act. And small players, there's not, it seems to be much evidence of them even trying to get over the start line. And it's sort of obvious if you read that sort of legislation, and I have read that legislation and many parts of it many times, and I find it complicated.
Yeah.
And I'm a specialist in this area. And if I find it complicated, how does your SME actually grapple with this?
Yeah.
Now, and the answer, of course, is what you're meant to do is you bring in the consultants or something, but that's expensive. So it's a sort of the same problem with just
it's a barrier, isn't it?
It really, really is. And I have to say, from my perspective, I've been involved in a number of regulatory initiatives and standards initiatives over the last sort of year or two. And every time the prism through which I look at it is enabler, enabler, enabler. How do we help people use AI responsibly? And of course, that means there have to be restrictions. There have to be some sort of governance processes, because that's part of being responsible. But light touch is, I think, what I always try and aim for.
I'm deeply European, and
that's a Belgian accent.
Yes, but I find that I actually like that the EU is taking a fairly measured step into how do we manage and regulate this extraordinarily powerful force. Because we work at Artefact with OpenAI and Google and all of the big AI developers, we sort of have a little bit of a view for the next few months of what's coming around it. And everyone we speak to is talking about AGI, is talking about humanoid robotics, is talking about quantum computing. It's very rare that we talk about the ethics of AI and what does AGI actually look like and how will it impact our society. And the truth is that we have one shot at getting it right, because if we don't get it right, the consequences can be dramatically bad for us as humanity. And so I think a slightly more measured approach, even if it takes a bit longer, even if it's a bit more complicated, is good and is desirable, because this can fundamentally change how society behaves. And I disagree a little bit with sort of the American gun-ho approach of removing every barrier and saying, go
we're
forth,
in a race.
kids, and we're in a race with China, so go and do everything. And here's the key to the Pentagons, and go and, stick AI and everything, and what could possibly go wrong.
And that's my worry, is that the EU Act stands there, but it's not going to stop that happening. So when we're talking about humanity, it's actually what's the lowest common denominator?
I agree.
It's America or China or North Korea, whoever's creating these models. So we're in a really strange situation where, like you said before, it's the Wild West. And the UK finds itself in a strange position, sort of in between Europe and America. And actually, some of the funding that we've got coming in, I think, recognises that we're not fully tied to Europe. So it's going to be really interesting what happens over the course of the next few years. It's if one good thing about it is it started the conversation. What is the right approach? Is it the EU approach or is it the American approach?
And in truth, we don't actually know yet.
There's
got to be a happy medium.
And exactly, it's going to be somewhere in the middle.
It's largely about probably speed of implementation, and of course, the big chunks of the EU AI Act, we're now talking about pushing it back another year, aren't we? But is that the right approach? Instinctively, I think it's probably not the right approach, simply because of the scale problem. It might be in the end of the day. I think what the UK
now
is
we have
doing.
caps who can stay on, you see.
That's nice.
Well, I didn't say everything's bad about the legislative. It's just the AI Act.
I didn't know we were going to get into that conversation. But
No. But look, we will see, and it may well be actually. We turn around and think, that sort of standard, that sort of relatively heavy governance approach is necessary. Interestingly, down the line, that approach may not seem that heavy, because once all the conformance standards are in, then it may be relatively easy to comply. The problem is they're not yet.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask each of you, and you're all from differing professions, and Matthew, you and I were talking about this beforehand. See, we can talk about what we were talking about beforehand.
Okay, they're very good.
Like you've talked, Chris, about valuation will still be going on. There'll still be surveyors, etc. It's a human thing. There's a lot of human touch to it. In 20 years, how do you?
I'm not sure about 20 years. Let's take sort of 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years. How
definitely can't look further than 10. That's your limit.
how do you see the future of valuation survey?
I think increasingly commoditized. I think the AVMs that we have will become more and more powerful as it bring in more and more contextual data and larger data sets. I think, Zoopla, Rightmove, the government is investing heavily into sort of automated valuation models to better understand this, because at the end of the day, if we want to tax properties on their valuations and so on, we need to be able to do it at scale. I think valuers will still become incredibly important for fairly unique buildings and units, particularly commercial real estate. But anything that can be automated today, which is a mathematical calculation, will be and probably already is to a great degree within the big surveyor firms. I think the report generation, all of those sorts of things will become far more automated. I think you'll have better drone surveys with better understanding of what it is. We were speaking to Rightmove a few months ago. They're doing sort of analysis of pictures of interiors to feed into the AVMs.
It sounds like you're describing an extinction event for valuers.
I think valuers become more specialized. I think they'll become very, very good at certain unusual properties and units. But if you're valuing something that is a 2-bed semi-detached on the outskirts of London, then yes, that would. And the pressure also comes from the people buying the valuation. So the banks, the mortgage lenders, all those sorts of things, who are less and less willing to pay for human valuers to go through it. And they have themselves AVMs with a board of valuers that reviews sample valuations every so often to validate them. But to Matthew's point, it becomes a numbers game and it becomes a volume, right? The more you have, the more you can do. But I think it will intrinsically change not just valuers, but the surveying profession as a whole. We were working with a QS firm recently where you can input sort of CAD drawings into an agentic software, and it gives you a cost report, fairly automatically. We're working.
That's good though. Who wants to be doing that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Get to the answer, and then
I don't want to be anywhere near that.
Well, you get to that answer, and then you do the valuable stuff, which is making decisions based
Exactly.
on it. That's what a client pays you for.
What's quite interesting is a lot of these sorts of things you're describing aren't really AI. AI is the catalyst for deterministic automation.
Yeah. But I think the interaction with the outputs is what you have. AI is an umbrella term for everything that mimics human cognitive behavior, right? And then within that, you have machine learning, you have neural networks, you have deep learning, you have big data, you have everything in there. Gen AI is a small proportion of it. But Gen AI is mass public, which is the first of AI tool that is mass public and everyone can use. I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago where they said 75% of US students now use AI on a daily basis. And you can see this in ChatGPT drop off when it's holiday times.
Really?
Yeah, it's massive. It's huge. But so the new generation coming through is AI native.
Well, it's interesting. I was talking to a university yesterday, and they're bringing it into the curriculum now at the very beginning, teaching people how to use it, because you can't escape it.
Absolutely.
There's no point in trying to lock it down.
I'm an external examiner for UCL. And I've been an external examiner for 3 years. The first year was we need to stop students using AI because that's not how it works. Then last year it was we need to sit exams in person so they can't use the laptops to do AI. And now it's Pardon my French, but fuck it. Let's just embrace it.
They're using it anyway.
You're going to have to get the blooper out on your old.
But actually, for me, it's interesting because as an employer, I will not employ a junior or senior who is not really competent in using AI.
See,
in
that's
a
where it's
day-to-day
turned
basis.
around. So
Yes.
now it's a must. They
Yeah,
must
exactly.
know how
And
to
I've
use
told
it.
UCL, I've said, unless you push out graduates who actually are very good at using it in a critical manner, as an understanding that everything that comes out of it is not gospel, that there are limits to its capabilities, understanding where and how to use it.
Yeah.
But unless you push out these graduates, they are of no use to me.
Exactly. It's interesting. Some of the universities are now asking for, as well as the essay to be submitted, is the prompt and the conversation, because they're saying yes, you use it, but we want to ensure you understand it, and the way that you converse with the AI will help us understand whether you actually know what's going on. So, early days again, but at least some universities are recognising this as something that can't be avoided.
That is fascinating, and also that you want graduates to come out who are competent in AI. Because we were talking before, you and I, Matthew, about the impact of AI for...
You guys had a long conversation.
We did. We had half an hour.
Some of us turned up on time.
I didn't want to say, but yeah. But we were talking about the impact on the legal profession, right?
Yeah.
And just because the narrative there, and again, this is just prevailing winds, right? This is overselling it, but is that you could probably, Gen AI would be able to do what your trainee legal, who would, in your words, be sat in the basement for 3 nights in a row churning through files, that can just be done. And that kind of rite of passage, so to speak, that you're kind of told about in the legal profession is no longer needed. And therefore, but then you end up missing a generation. I don't know. Just talk about that.
It's just quite interesting. So, I mean, the example we were talking about was disclosure or discovery in US parlance, where you still, even now, have huge teams of people sitting in basements deciding whether documents are relevant and need to be disclosed or not. It's vastly expensive and it's really inefficient. You can do these things now with Gen AI. Gen AI is better. In fact, for AI of some sort, things like support vector machines have been better at this for decades, certainly at least 1 decade. And there's really good research in the States which shows that the results are more accurate if you use a machine than if you use a human.
It's not shocking that, though.
It's not. But what's quite interesting about it is that the human is taken as the gold standard. People are reluctant to use Gen AI because they're looking for perfection. Why are you looking for perfection? You should be looking at what the humans are doing. And
Humans
that's bad.
aren't perfection.
Yeah, your best employee is not 100%.
No, but and you're not getting your best employees because what some people don't realise is quite how hard and solder strong it is to be sitting in a basement for day after day, 8 hours a day, maybe 20 minutes for lunch, clicking through documents.
It doesn't sound great.
It's really hard. It's really hard to get it right. And so this is quite interesting because people now say, but one of the problems is if you get Gen AI to do all this, how do the next cohort of trainees learn? They're never in the trenches. They never get it.
Yeah.
But step back. Is that the sort of thing we actually really need our juniors to be able to do?
Well, I think it's as long as your clients are still willing to pay for it. So we were working with a Magic Circle law firm a few months ago, and their clients increasingly unwilling to pay for the trainees' time to do drafting of contracts and things like this. But they were running an interesting experiment with a specialist legal AI software. And partners had asked a trainee, second seat trainee, and that AI solution, same instructions to draft a contract. They will then receive both and they wouldn't know which one was generated by which. And I forget the exact figure, but something like in 85% of cases, the partners preferred the Gen AI drafted one, not knowing which one was which, than the one.
It's like the Coke Pepsi.
It's exactly what I was thinking.
But interesting that example is quite an interesting one because that doesn't surprise me. But putting contracts together is something that's good training for the juniors, whereas sitting in a room reading documents isn't. And so I think we're going to all. And this is not just a legal thing. This is all professions which are affected by AI.
Surveying, yeah.
You've got to start thinking. Okay, you can't now. Give junior employees minion jobs because machines can do that. So you've got to start thinking again, how do we actually train them? And is the thing they're missing out on a really useful part of their training anyway? Probably not. So let's think of different ways of training them to be the strategic thinkers and the people who add the value in the future, because that's actually what we need.
But if you can avoid employing them for a few years and your profit margins improve, do you
I don't think your profit margins.
I'm not saying it's not short sighted. I'm just saying
I don't actually think your profit margins improve because my partner is a lawyer for big Magic Circle law firm. What her clients ask her to do is now more than when she started as a trainee, because the expectation is that they are using AI.
Okay.
Therefore, instead of taking 6 hours to do this, I expect you to take 3.
And therefore your margins are going down.
And so your margin remains the same, essentially. But it becomes existential, as in, if you're not using it, then your clients will ask why.
Yeah, because when they started, it was like, oh, this is going to be the great kind of gift that makes you stand out from your competitors. That's not the case anymore.
No,
everyone's using it. So you've got to do it just to keep up, really.
And it's the same in surveying.
That isn't the case in construction, right?
Well, I think everyone's experimenting, at least at the moment. I mean, I haven't heard anyone say that they're not using it in some shape or form.
Yeah.
So I think that's changed over the last few years.
But the key is experimenting, right? I think there's often a big sort of gulf between experimenting, and lots of people in lots of professions are experimenting. They buy licenses for lots of software. They have innovation departments who play. Comparatively fewer, I think, even now, are actually using AI as part of their core workflows for everything.
I mean, anecdotally, what we see, so we deploy lots of AI for lots of different firms. If anything, when a firm starts deploying AI, it leads to an increase in costs rather than reduction in costs. Because they suddenly have to employ someone who's an AI specialist. They have to start doing some of the AI governance, data strategies, the data ownerships, all those sorts of things.
But this is a short term.
It is, but they gain in efficiency rather than reducing in costs. So it's not because you're turning on Copilot, you can suddenly fire everyone in your call center or in your customer service teams and things like this. What we do, anecdotally, what we do find is that for most roles, it saves half an hour to 2 hours a day in menial work.
Yeah.
And that
in valuation specifically.
Across all white collar workers from our clients that we work with.
Really? Yeah, because I mean, that's kind of how we look at it as well.
And we see far more gains in back office functions than we see in front office functions, because front office functions are usually more human relationship driven, whereas back office is more menial repetitive tasks and churn. But that in a good case, 2 hour a day you save, it doesn't mean you can replace that FTE or get rid of the FTE, but it means that that person now has more headroom to think critically, to think strategically. Yeah. And even if they go home an hour early, they'll be so much happier, so much better for it. They're likely to stay for longer. That is quality of life improvements.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly how we try and frame it as well. It's like, what would you, for like a contractor, if you're spending tens of millions on quantity surveying, and and for a day a week, 2 hours a day, they're doing such low level tasks, and you're paying them 100 grand to do it. What would your margin, what would your projects, what would your programs look like if all of a sudden every single QS had an extra day a week to think and to actually be a strategic thinker and actually
So we make better decisions. That's the key. Because a lot of problems on projects come from the fact bad decisions made through the fact that we haven't got enough time or we've rushed something.
Poor procurement.
So that's where the opportunity is.
The danger with that is that instead of taking that time to actually think and be more measured about
it, just put more work. Yeah, and that is the worry with this. And that's what's happened in other revolutions. If you look at it, in the 80s, Excel came in theory, that should have given us more time. It didn't. We just packed more into our day. So that is the concern, and only time will tell. And of course, you say at the moment it's mainly impacting the back office, which is right, but I think that will change. I think what we with other kind of technological revolutions, it's taken quite a while to sort of think. And take the internet, for example, probably sort of 15, 20 years till it became some kind of mass adoption. This is happening so fast that we don't have time to kind of sit on the sidelines and see how it plays out.
800 million weekly users of ChatGPT.
It's insane.
That's alone. There's 2 billion tokens a minute.
It's just insane.
That's only on ChatGPT.
But if you just take the internet as a comparable, if you go back to like the birth, when internet started being used, say 1990, it was really hard to foresee. You knew it was going to be transformative, but it was really hard to foresee where we'd be now. Like you maybe wouldn't have predicted Uber or Tinder and things like that. But obviously, in retrospect, when you look back, it's obvious. Of course, you can use it for that. And I think it'll be the same with AI, but just even more powerful. We'll look back in 10 years' time and go, of course, that
was obvious.
But we can't foresee it yet.
But we're seeing this now with our clients. We're now starting to work out what AI actually is good for. What are the good use cases? And you'll be familiar with sort of the peak of excitement, the hype, and then the traffic disillusionment, and so on. We're going to go through that traffic disillusionment soon. I suspect there's a bit of an AI financing bubble that will burst soon, etc. Lots of people will lose their shirts. But then inevitably you reach a plateau of contentment, I think, whatever it's called, where you start actually understanding what to use it for, what it's good at, all those sorts of things.
Although that's sort of changing though, isn't it? Because what's quite interesting about this compared with previous technological revolutions is the pace of change is so rapid. I mean, you talk about that normal sort of cycle. Well, fine, you can see that happening with, say, generative AI as we now understand it. But where's agentic going to be next year? Where's the buzzword I haven't even heard of yet?
AGI.
And then of course AGI. So there are constantly new, what in a sane world we would be calling brand new technologies arriving every few months. And so we're having to start again, being terribly excited, then thinking, okay, this is a nice toy. What am I going to use it for? And then saying, actually, it's quite good for this sort of narrow but increasingly wider set of tasks.
Because we haven't even talked about things like physical AI, like robotics, and what's happening. That's going incredibly fast as well. And the impact on construction, on humanoid robots, I think is being underestimated.
BMW published a report 2 months ago. They have 50 humanoid robots in their car plant in Bavaria.
I've seen the videos. Incredible.
This is the Optimus type robots, right? And typically in the car plant, you have robotic arms that do repetitive actions, so moving things from A to B or doing soldering and those sorts of things. These are humanoid robots that can replace any human at any station across the
factory. They learn from the environment.
They learn from the environment. They have 50 of them. They've just put 500 more on order.
Really?
They work 20 hours a day. And so far, they've only had 4 incidences.
What are they doing in the other 4 hours a day?
They're charging.
And they charge themselves. The best thing about it is they charge.
They go into a little room where they go and plug themselves in. No, literally.
Really, that is hilarious.
But you know, Elon Musk, he's awarded himself, what was it, $1 trillion. A lot of that
nice way you can get it.
Absolutely. But a lot of it is based on, obviously, is the Tesla cars, but a lot of it is on the robot as well. So there's a lot of vested interest.
And to be clear, he only gets $1 trillion if he gets 100 trillion of value.
And 1 million robots.
Something of the sort.
It's still okay though.
Yes,
he's doing all right. We're not going to worry about him.
He'll be all right. But it's the combination for me. There's 4 not scary, exciting, slightly daunting advances that are coming through. One is AGI, which we can't quite define, but we know it's going to be scary and big and horrible and completely redefine society. Then you have humanoid robots or advanced robotics, which is coming away, which coupled with AGI is quite scary. You have adversarial models. So Google has a program called Atlas where they have 2 GPTs essentially building each other up. So you remove the code developers, you remove all of those from the picture. They are suggesting to each other how to improve their code, how to get better. So the pace of change is going to go massive. And then the wild card in all of this for me is quantum computing. Is we can't quite scale it up yet, but we will soon in the next 5 to 10 years. And quantum will completely change how we do computing and will massively superpower super intelligence and everything else.
Because they're all connected as well.
They're all connected.
It's when people talk about ChatGPT as if it's a standalone thing. All of these technologies are going to rise up and they're going to empower each other. It's going to move very fast.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, with quantum computing? Because actually there are some people, some quite serious people, who think we'll never get there. And it's intrinsically
and Microsoft
unscalable.
Is probably the most advanced, and they're really struggling to scale it up. But the thing now with advances in AI, they can do a faster rate of experimentation, simulations, and so on to be able to scale it up.
But then we need to start getting the machines to work on fusion, because otherwise we won't have energy for all this.
That's a big bet. That's the bet, isn't it? That we're all hoping that's what's going to happen. If it doesn't,
the thing which destroys us will in fact set us free.
And so, some concluding thoughts here, then, guys. Just we've got some community questions that you've had come through, James. So we'll come to those, but just on reflection, and talking to the profession again, taking it back to the surveyors, what would be your advice individually, both about the guidance and about AI generally, for what surveyors should be doing in 2026?
I can start us off. For one is read the guidance. read with an open mind as to how does that help me to embark on the AI journey and protect me. But 2, I'd say play around with AI. Build agents, they're really easy to do. Use ChatGPT, feed it as your report, feed it data sets, have conversations. They're an incredibly powerful tool. I find people are scared of it and don't know where to start. I think just use a free version without putting any client data in it, then get paid the £20 a month or get an enterprise version and start using it in anger. There's online, you can find enormous amounts of prompt libraries, which you can then start playing with, which are sort of pre-prepared prompts. And my best trick is to ask Gemini or GPT or Copilot to help it write the best prompt. So you say, help me write a prompt to do this, and it will be really good at doing that. And then you continue playing with it, having conversations, seeing where it's useful, where it isn't, and you make your own.
So dive straight in.
Dive straight in and start using it in anger, because if you don't, you'll be left behind.
And Matthew?
Yeah, so firstly, I agree with all of that. In terms of the standards, I think it's all been said really. Treat it as an enabler. Use it to protect you. Don't use it to put you off. In terms of the more general thing, absolutely do your experimenting. And when you see a real use case where you can use an AI tool for client work, go ahead and just do it. Do it with willing clients. Be transparent about what you're doing, and then make sure you just document every step the first few times. What have I done? Why have I done it that way? Document your thinking process, because that way, if it all goes south and you get sued, you'll have a good chance of showing you weren't, in fact, negligent. You used AI responsibly.
Excellent. And James, final.
I agree with both those points. And then I would add, to go back to what I said at the beginning, is really think of this as a cultural change piece, whether for you or your organization. This isn't just another technology rollout, and it's your responsibility. Maybe your firm's got some training programs, fantastic. If it hasn't, there's so much good resource out there. It's just Google do it, the OpenAI do it. There's YouTube videos, and we're not asking people to become super coders and learn, the mathematics behind neural networks. It's all natural language. It's not that difficult, actually. And once you get the hang of it and you realize how powerful it is, you won't go back. And the other thing I would challenge people to do is, we've spoken a lot about productivity, which is absolutely the right thing to do. Like, if we can do a task faster, then brilliant. The words of Professor Richard Susskind, who's in the law profession, springs to mind when he says, we also need to ask ourselves the question, which is, how in the future will we answer the question to which surveyors are our current best answer? And that really changes the thinking, because you've got to look ahead as well. So, and that's not an either or. You should do both those things at the same time.
Fascinating. Cool. Okay. And so I think we've covered the RICS guidance, but we've got 3 community questions, haven't we? That have come in.
Is this the surveying community or the community at large?
We didn't go
We'll let you decide. You can have a guess afterwards. So we've got one from Anthony Slumbers, which is, how might the RICS ensure that this standard promotes responsible adoption rather than simply risk aversion?
I think read the guidance.
Or listen to the last hour and a half, right?
I think the guidance has to be taken into the spirit in which it's meant, which is there to help guide and support people, and as Matthew says, be an enabler for people to be on the journey. I think for someone who reads it carefully, it really is not onerous. It's not that complicated. At most, it's half a day's work to get yourself set up. As Matthew says, it's then the documenting a process is the mental process you put yourself through to saying, this is how I'm going to use it, and so on. And you'll find that within a couple of weeks, if you are using it properly, you'll be saving time as opposed to using time. And it will help you structure your thoughts and your communication to your clients and those sorts of things. It's there to protect you. It's there to make sure you are set up with the right foundations. We're assuming a reasonably low degree of maturity. We're assuming that people are starting from scratch. It's to put in place the training wheels, the guidance, the environment, so that people can embark on it with confidence and know what they're doing, and protect the clients and the professions.
I mean, one thing I might say in response to that sort of community question or comment, really wasn't it? So, if we didn't have this standard in place, then you might well get an awful lot worse from your indemnity insurer.
Yes, exactly. And I think I can understand that kind of response. If you're someone who uses AI a lot already, you can look at it and say, well, a lot of this is obvious why we're doing it. But as you said, this is trying to get everyone up to the same level playing field. So there is a lot of people who haven't even started on this journey yet. And I think what the RICS, exactly. So what the RICS is trying to do is get everyone up to that same level. So whether you're a one-man band who's just started or whether you're a big firm, we're giving everyone some guidance about how you can. And as I said, it's not meant to be a stick to beat people with. It's meant to be to help you.
And I'd say as a group, we've spent hours discussing the intricacies of using should versus must versus those sorts of things.
You've been loving that, haven't you, Matt?
Absolutely.
Where you come into your element there. Okay, so another question here. And again, wow. I'm not sure who this comes from. Maybe, James, you know. But the tone of the standard reads as though AI is primarily a source of risk and potential harm rather than an enabler of professional capability. This feels like we've already kind of covered this, but this just to go through it. Are you concerned that this could have the unintended effect of discouraging adoption, either by creating fear and compliance fatigue among smaller firms or by leading others to dismiss the guidance as overly restrictive and out of step with commercial
reality?
reality?
It really is to inform surveyors absolutely of the potential risks of using it so they're aware and they can use it properly. And they don't have to worry too much about what the risks potentially are, because we mark them out quite clearly and we say these are the steps for you to follow to mitigate those risks.
I mean, the other thing, let's be realistic. This is a standard. It's a professional standard. It's not an AI sort of software vendor's puff piece. It's not designed to get you terribly excited.
Always sensitive.
I mean, of course it talks about risk because it's a standard. It's what they do.
Yeah. Okay. It feels like a lot.
It is a regulated profession, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And so, I'm just a messenger here, guys. Relax.
You wrote that yourself. It's very suspicious that you couldn't say who it's from.
Oh yeah, that one was from Paul from Sealing. Yeah.
I think the tone of that one was like, to make sure we're not stifling innovation. So I can, and as you said, a lot of this is a tightrope, isn't it? We're trying to get the balance right.
Yeah.
And undoubtedly there'll be, changes.
Which you'll find if you read the guidance, it doesn't say you can't use this AI or you can't use that software. You can't do this. It doesn't restrict. It just says if you do, bear in mind these are the steps you have to follow in order to protect yourself and to protect your indemnity insurance and all those sorts of things.
No, I mean, I certainly feel from reading it and from discussing it here more openly that it is only kind of binding you to professionalism.
Exactly.
It's kind of guardrailing what the RICS would guardrail without AI. Right? It's saying do the right thing, be professional about it. It's not saying don't use it. It's terrifying.
Is it inappropriate to say that guardrail is not a verb?
I told you we shouldn't invite a lawyer.
But no, I agree with you completely.
And final question, because I'm now getting embarrassed here, aren't I? So this one came from Stuart Earl, again, I think to you, James. So how do we counter our clients using AI/ChatGPT to preempt or even challenge the technical advice that we give? Often people take at face value what the computer is telling them, but they're wrong.
Yeah, and that goes back to the point that it only gets you so far. So we should say, that's great. You've used AI to experiment stuff. Now you need the professional person to actually tell you what to do with that information. So I'd see it as a good thing, and to kind of embrace it, and then actually say to them, "Oh, this is our chance to tell them what the risks are, tell them about the RICS standard and why we're doing it."
Now we know how doctors feel, right? When you say, "No, I'm going to Google that."
But
also, I mean, there's a serious point here, which is that we should all be, as professionals, actually welcoming our clients being a little bit more engaged and challenging us, because we're not always right, and actually being forced, a little bit like AI, being forced to explain our thinking and our reasoning and why what we've said is on balance probably a more useful guide to follow than what ChatGPT has said, is a useful thing to be doing in its own right.
Awesome. Well, I have to say, I've thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. And James, Matthew, Chris, thank you for coming on episode 250
it's a real pleasure.
of Own the Build.
Really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
I'm disappointed by the lack of cake, but
do we sing happy birthday now?
You can do, by all means. Excellent. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.